Hello everyone. As you know, we are completing our anthropology. In this quest, now we are beginning with paper 2, and the topic that we are going to do is 3.3. So this is the particular unit that we are going to do. In this unit, we are going to do two most important topics: sacred complex and nature man spirit complex. Now what do I mean by these topics is very simple fact that these will give you 10 to 15 marks. And as far as this unit 3.3 is concerned, from my personal experience I can tell you that every year there will be a question for at least 10 to 15 marks. And if I'm not wrong, if you add 3.1 and 3.2, this can reach to 20 to 25 marks at max, and every year there will be question from this, and thus this topic becomes very important. So we will be starting with the topic called as sacred complex and nature man spirit complex. Now in a brief I want to tell you what we are going to do, or what this thing is all about. Now the meaning of sacred is something that we all associate with worshipping, right? Sacred is something which is holy. Sacred is something which is pure. Sacred is something that requires a certain set of qualification to be that person. For example, a person cannot be a pandit in a temple because he has to or she has to go through a certain set of practices, rituals, and their studies in order for a person to sit on that position. Similar is this sacred. Sacred is something which is pure. And what we do every day, like teaching, writing, everything which is not sacred comes under profane. Now profane doesn't necessarily mean that this is bad, but sacred is something which necessarily means which is the good. Alright. And what is nature man spirit? Nature, as you can see, is basically ecology, right? And nature is something which provides us everything: food, water, our livelihood for that matter, and we are completely dependent on nature. Man is here symbolizes us as a human being. It is a gender neutral term. Man means everything which is basically human. Next is nature man spirit. Spirit is something which is godly, right? This comes from a thing we call it as something from the metaphysical world, out of the world, spiritual world, like Atma. These are something which is associated with spirit. Now this sacred complex and nature man spirit complex was given by LP Vidyarthi. Now this is not important, but I have mentioned that this is his birth year and this is the year when he passed away. So LP Vidyarthi is a scholar which has given the concept of sacred complex and nature man spirit complex. Now LP Vidyarthi has given this thing in the year 1961 when he has written a book called as Sacred Complex of Hinduvaya. Now this is most important thing because this is the book that we are going to discuss, we are going to talk over here. Alright, now okay, so sacred complex we are going to start, and this topic you have to write now. This is a name of book. So see, whenever I'm teaching, you have to make sure that you're writing the heading, that is the topic. Write down scholar, write down book, advantage or disadvantage, some pros or cons, some similarities or differences, and any sort of conclusion, criticism if I'm adding, and then you have to compile it in such a body when we'll be discussing in the end of this book. But these are your hard earned notes, because most of the time people are running behind the notes. I did the same thing, and I realized that you don't need 500-600 words or answer for everything. All you need is a good answer about 300 words, and that is what we are going to do here. So what is sacred complex? Sacred complex is something which is associated with sacred geography, sacred performances, and specialist. Now what do I mean by sacred geography is that if I'm going to a place, if I'm going to, say for example, in a temple, so that temple complex entirely will be sacred. There will be some small temples, there will be a big temple. So all this area, the small deities will make this geography as a sacred geography. If there is a river, that river becomes sacred. If there is a mountain, the mountain becomes sacred. For example, Govardhan mountain, when I had visited Mathura, for that matter, Gokul and Mathura. So basically this is something, that mountain becomes sacred, that is geography. If Ganga river, okay, this becomes sacred, part of a geography. Some what do you say, there is trees which are sacred, so this is basically geography. Sacred performances, basically rituals, Shrad, then there are various havans, yajna, that comes under sacred performances. Sacred specialists are basically, for example, pandits, okay, then there are some brahmins, then there are specialist brahmin for Shrad, there is specialist brahmins for marriage, even the barbers, they are also specialists because they take off the hairs at that particular time. Then the musicians, they create this aroma of music, these people are also included in specialist. So you're going to make this diagram, writing this thing, and you're going to write the examples of it. Now as far as this sacred complex is concerned, what is its relevance? So what it is used, okay, what is its relevance? So this is the relevance. What do I mean by it? Is cultural transmission and integration. For example, if this is a person A and he visits for that matter Ayodhya, okay, then what he'll do is he'll go in this place, he'll meet a person B over here, who will be basically a sacred specialist of this place, and he'll learn something from here. And when he goes back to his own place, his own home, he'll try to imitate it. But in this process, what will happen is that this person might add something or delete something, right? So this is something that we say cultural transmission. Now this person has copied something from Ayodhya to his home, and while this person was visiting this place, he told something about his place to this B, and this B also incorporated it in his own sort of practices and performance. So that leads to integration. And which is a basic reason for this all is a cultural transmission. Alright, so now moving forward, the next thing that we have to understand here is this, that this whole thing is about diversity. Okay, India is a country, there is 179 languages, over 500 dialects, small variations here and there. So there are like 1700-1800 types of we say bolis or bhashas or language, not exactly the language but some dialects, that makes India one of the diverse place in the world. Then we have geography, we have mountains, we have valleys, we have desert, we have snow, we have cold desert, we have hot desert, we have coastal, we have island, we have everything. So that is what the diversity of it is. And social diversity, we have Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikh, Jains, Buddhists, Zoroastrians, and all these people, atheists, these are also. So this makes India a extremely diverse place. Now people, these are divided by caste, these are divided by sect. I am Vaishnav Panthi, I am Shiv Panthi, alright. Then the Kabir Panthi. These are type of sect that these people are. Caste, some are Telis, Kunbis, Kurmis, Kayasthas, etc. These are all this sort of caste. Then there are traditions, hundreds of traditions. For example, in north there is a Chhat Puja, there is we say this Karwa Chauth, and in south there is a Vat Puja. There's a plant of people tree where people worship these tree. So that is the difference between tradition. The history is different. For example, as far as the northern part of India is concerned and southern part of India is concerned, the history is different. Northern part of India is mostly uh, uh, the history where the people have colonized this northern India. When it comes to southern India, the history is that the southern Indian regions, they have had their empirical expansions till Burma, till Suvarnadip, that is Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Maldives. These areas were under southern Indian, for example, Cholas, or so that makes difference of the history. Geography, as we already have discussed. Statuses, of course, there are the, for example, if I say dominant caste, so dominant caste is not necessarily Brahmins in places. There are Marathas in Maharashtra, Jats are dominant, Reddis are dominant. So these are not Brahmins, but these are dominant. So that also depends upon status. And the last one is a class, of course, and there is a lot of debate going on this particular, right? There is some capitalistic class, and then there is labor class. In between there are middle class. So that is it. Now GPS here doesn't mean global positioning system, it means geography, performances and specialist. So I don't think you're going, when the question is of sacred complex, the thing that you're going to remember is GPS, and GPS doesn't mean global positioning system, it means geography, performance and specialist. I have added this diagram. Okay, you people have made this diagram in the before slide. River, mountain, katha, home, shraddh, puja, ritual, ceremony, yajna, havan, specialist, pandit, brahmins, etc. Now we have basically will have add this thing called as case study. See, when we are writing answer, we are going to start with intro, scholar, right, a book, and what is the concept. Then we move to body. Okay, in body we are going to add its advantage, disadvantage, okay, pros, cons. Then we are going to add some criticism, okay, and at the end we are going to add a case study. Now see, this case study is not something which is going to be there in every question, but if the question is being asked, then case study needs to be put in, because it will fetch you another 1 mark, and this is for sure it happens, because last year I missed 2 questions, I could not write 2 questions, and still I got 261 marks in anthropology, which was a decent score, which was more than a decent score, despite of missing 2 questions. The reason was that whenever there was a question, I added a case study, as simple as that. So this is one thing that I want you to understand, and case studies are not something which you are supposed to forget, you have to write it down. So as we know that LP Vidyarthi has studied the sacred complex of Gaya, and then he divided. You have to make this diagram, okay, you have to make this sort of a big elliptical, you call it as sacred geography, okay. Then you're going to make these ellipticals, like this is the total region, okay, then zone, then segment, then center. Alright, so this is the sort of diagram that you're going to make it. Alright, so moving forward, so what are these hypotheses about sacred complex? So what hypothesis, it means its role. What is its role? We already have discussed that its role is integration and cultural transmission. Alright, so this is the two rules of this particular thing. The first is continuity between great tradition and little tradition. That is the meaning of integration as well as transmission. The third one is continuity. Now what is great tradition and little tradition? For example, we talk about just for example, we have a Hindu Rashtra, okay, this is example, okay, and this is Shiv Panthi, Vaishnav Panthi, Kabir Panthi, then Lingayats, then there are very Pagal Panthis. There are various sort of Pantha, but if we talk about it, it is whole of a Hindu. Alright, so this is complete cosmic chaos in language of some person, Hindus, right? But there are certain sects like big Shiva, Vaishnava, right? But still there are small sects, like in Maharashtra there are Masovas, then there is Maramai, Mata Maya. These are certain sort of a local phenomena. Okay. Now for example, if this local phenomena is being incorporated in this bigger phenomena, we call it as a universalization. We'll discuss it in the further topic, in the further part of it, universalization. And if this particular part is being, for example, you say that this particular part is being percolated down, parocolization. Like for example, Rakhi, not the Savant. Rakhi is basically the thread that the sister ties on the brother's end. Usually this is something, a practice of a small place, and now that practice has been taken up, and that practice has been become universalized, right? Even there is certain thing, for example, in a global part, Vaishno, for example, this Vaishno Devi is a local phenomena. Now this has gone and have been accepted in the main culture, that becomes a part of a greater tradition. Smaller are little tradition. So if you have a regional deity, local deity is a little tradition. In a whole, there is a great tradition. For example, the Buddhist circle, there is a Hindu circle, so that becomes a greater tradition. Transmission, of course, specialist, of course, and there is a secular zone. Secular zone means what? Now if this is a sacred geography, this is a temple, then you find that there are some hotels, then there are some motels, then there are some recreational places. So these recreational places, hotels, places become secular zone, that is restaurants and hotels. Specialist, you already know, that is Pandit Brahmins, hairstylist, not stylist, of course, the barber which just take off all the hairs, and that's it. All right. And even the musicians. So this is it. Next, secular geography is basically a complete area. Now past and present you have to consider. In past, the sacred geography was a bigger area, but now the sacred geography has been shrunk and the secular one is increased. Now for example, recently I have visited the Krishna temple, the Krishna Janmabhoomi at Mathura when I traveled. So I noticed that there is a temple, and then there is a whole bigger area of a market over here. So this is, if this is a temple, then this is whole the market which is here. So this market becomes secular zone, and this become the sacred zone. So now the sacred zone is basically shrinking, or this zone is increasing, like the zone which is there is increasing. So that is what I mean, and you have to add this diagram, which will fetch you definitely greater marks. Now this is something that I am adding, this performances, specialists, and geography. Okay. Alright, so this is it about this, that puja, home, havan, shraddh, katha, etc. Specialist like monk, brahmin, singer, musicians, staff, florist, astrologer, geography, region, zone, segment, cluster, center, river, mountain. These are certainly the different part of it. Alright, now the next thing is we need to have some examples. Alright. Alright. So there are some other case studies which are being asked now. Recently, UPSC is basically becoming unpredictable, because it is trying to make the paper tricky. Like if this is a way from here to here, UPSC is just trying to dance it around here. So you have to understand that there are some other places. Now what sacred complex is, you people understand. You're going to write exactly the similar thing if anything comes. But these are certain parts that you have to understand. Okay. For example, Saraswati has studied Nimsal, Goa. These are the sacred complex which has been studied by Saraswati, Goa and Nimsal. And then myth and reality of classical cultural tradition. Classical, the continuum, basically the very past ancient one which are, being transmitted. So myth and reality about that, Nimsal and Goa. And then myth and reality of classical cultural tradition. Classical, the continuum, basically the very past ancient one which are being transmitted. So myth and reality about that, Nimsal and Goa. And then myth and reality of classical cultural tradition. Classical, the continuum, basically the very past ancient one which are being transmitted. So myth and reality about that, Nimsal and Goa. Then if the question asks on Makhanja, then it's Janakpur and Ratanpur. So these are the two sacred complexes that have been studied by Makhanja, Janakpur and Ratanpur. The third is Mahapatra, which Mahapatra, by the name you understand this is some Odisha based name, and the place is Lingaraja temple. So this is about the sacred complex. Next topic, which is the most important here, is nature man spirit complex. Mark my word, 10 to 15 marks every second to third year. The question will be here, at least on 3.1. Every second to third year there will be a question from 3.3 unit. All right, now this NMS complex, just like sacred complex, was given by LP Vidyarthi, and here he has given this thing in a book called as the Maler Nature Man Complex in Hill Tribe of Bihar, 1963. This is important because you are going to write it, you are going to memorize it, and you are going to write it every answer where there is a question of nature man spirit. You are going to start it with who introduced it, the name of book where he has introduced it. Now this Maler basically means the Sauriya Paharia tribe. This is the name of tribe. We are also going to add case study in the further thing. Next, moving forward in a simple thing, there are different type of shifting cultures, right? For example, we call it as Jhoom in Northeast India. It is called as Khallu or Kallu by Sauriya Paharia tribe. Now, I had written mains in 2021 and 2022. 2021 there was a question on ecology and nature man spirit. Alright, so this question has a good possibility will be repeated by 2023 or 2024. So you have to understand that this topic has become most important, one of the most important. Now there is a nature, there is a man, and there is a spirit. Nature is signified by ecology, man basically the social institution, spirit shows the spiritual world. Now if we talk about detail that what nature provides us, it provides us medicine, it provides us food, livelihood, agriculture, fruit, hunting, gathering. These are all the activities which are being sponsored by nature, and these are basically free of cost, right? And all we are doing is over exploiting it, and that is other part of discussion right now. Here the most important thing is nature provides all this thing free of cost to us. Then we as a human being, we have some basic needs, okay? We call it as food, cloth, and shelter. All these three are provided by nature. Man has more or like other basic needs, which is family, marriage, sex, and food. This becomes some of the basic needs for a man to be a social animal rather than just being an animal. The only difference between man and animal is that man is a social animal, and what makes it a social is family, marriage, and all these things. Then spirit, here it is in this nature man spirit of Maler is Gosain. Now this Gosain is a spirit, okay, which have to be satisfied with, which have to be made happy. Then another spirits that we will talk about here is ancestors, and then there are certain spirits which do good and bad, like benevolent and malevolent. So this is good and this is the bad one, okay? So this benevolent means good intention, malevolent it means certain having bad intentions. Now if we make a diagram which is here, that this and this particular part over here becomes the nature man spirit, because there is a part nature, then man, and then there is a spirit, and this part over here signifies as the nature man spirit. Now what is the utility of it? Now we have discussed it, okay, what nature man spirit is, what's complex sacred complexes, what is its relevance, why we are doing this. Before that, write it down, a few example where people have studied. For example, Sahai he studied Nicobari. Then there is Prasad, he studied Paharia. And then there is a Korwa tribe, which was Sandhavar. Okay, so Sandhavar, Prasad and Sahai, they studied Korwa, Paharia and Nicobari. Now you have to write it down because you can add it as a case study. Now, why? This is the most important study. Why nature, man, spirit, or sacred complex, for that matter? Why nature, man, spirit? The reasons are here. Very clear reasons that anyone can understand. Now, if I'm a company, I want to extract uranium. And I found out that this is your house, and below your house there is basically a mine. Okay, your house is a place and it is having 100, 200 million metric ton of uranium or whatever, liquid gas or anything. We have infinite source of thing. Now that is not a practical thing, but just assume that under your house there is a very big oil well. Okay, just make it very simple. There is an oil well under your house. Now what I need to do is I want you to leave this place. Okay, I will give you a bigger house. Okay, these are certain things which will be happening, but the thing is that you don't want to. Why? Because this is your ancestral house. And then you will say that I'll fight to death, but I will not, let you have this thing, because this thing is certain sort of, emotional things. That is the same thing which happens with the tribals. Now, tribals are basically the people who are, simple. These people are not certainly, derived by the profit sort of mind, but we do, right? So there comes a concept of tribal resistance. People are someone who are resisting these tribals. Tribals are resisting these companies because these companies are attacking or exploiting the mountains. Now these people believe that in this mountain the spirits of their ancestor lives. So even these people, these are assume that this is a land where the agricultural is practiced, but this is not enough. They need land over here, and these people will have enough food, but they will never ever plow this place. Never ever plow this place. Why they'll never do this? Because they believe that their ancestor lives over here, and if they hurt in any way to this land, that will not have a good impact on this crop as well, or their personal life, or they don't want to disturb their ancestors. And what we want is, we want to exploit this place because there is a lot of resources or mineral over here, so it creates tribal resistance. Then we want the people to accept the developmental acceptance. For example, we want to make a tunnel out of it, because if we bypass this thing, it is like 20 kilometers, or for example 30 kilometers, but if I do this, it is just 1 kilometer. So the thing is, this project will also be resisted because this is something their ancestral place and they won't let this happen to. Then if, for example, we want to rehabilitate, for example, they accept that, okay, fine, we are ready to move, but now the rehabilitation is not that easy, because the land which they provide is either waterlogged, houses are just one room house, 2 room house, and congested. There is no trees, there is no greenery. Okay, then there is a certain cultural shock because these were tribals and now they are into villages which is dominated by caste. Then there is national growth and development. This is basically a point that you can add to anything that is national growth and development, because as far as this tribal resistance are concerned, they may be a legitimate causes, that are actually the legitimate causes, but at the same time we have to understand that these things are going to be detrimental for the national cause, because certain non-state actors will try to put more fire in this particular resistance and use it as a way to destabilize the government, destabilize the state. So that is something of a part. Now nature and spirit has some criticism. Now no one has asked criticism, but you are going to write all the thing. You have written the relevance, right? You have written the need, so you have to read the write the criticism. What can be the criticism for nature and spirit? It halts developmental activity, right? It does halt the development activity. Then feeling of alienation, feeling of alienation is strengthened. ठीक है, alienation is strengthened. Then what happens is nature and spirit, think about it, what else can happen if these things are happening. National developmental activities, feeling of alienation, this left-wing extremism also spread. So this is it. Now what can be the way forward? Okay, we have written the case studies also, but what are the way forward here? First is planning should include diverse groups. Okay, then there can be monograph and specialists on groups. Okay, government and NGOs to build confidence building measures and etc. This can be it. So this is how you're going to conclude an answer. This is going to be exactly the way where you will be able to fetch really good marks, and that is something that you people will agree. And this is all about the sacred complex and nature and spirit complex. So thank you for watching and have a great day. Next video when we meet, we'll be completing the rest of the topics.